Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Speak Smart IELTS channel, the podcast where we explore ideas that not only expand your English, but also help you live more meaningfully. Today's episode is called Minimalism in Daily Life. Now, when people hear the word minimalism, many picture empty white rooms, bare walls, and a lifestyle that feels cold or restrictive. But in reality, minimalism is not about deprivation. It's about liberation. It's about choosing what truly matters and letting go of what doesn't. Because let's be honest, we live in a world that constantly pushes us toward more. More possessions, more choices, more information, more noise. Yet deep down, many of us feel that the more we have, the less satisfied we become. Imagine this. You wake up to your alarm, reach for your phone before even opening your eyes, scroll through notifications, emails, and social media updates. You open your closet, full of clothes, but still can't decide what to wear. By the time you're ready to leave the house, your mind already feels exhausted. You haven't even started your day, but your mental space is already cluttered. That's the reality of modern life. Busy yet strangely empty, full of motion but lacking meaning. Minimalism offers a quiet way out of this chaos. It invites us to slow down, to question what we bring into our lives, and to create space not only in our homes, but also in our minds. Every object we own, every digital app we download, every commitment we accept, they all demand our time, attention, and energy. The truth is, the things we own often end up owning us. They require maintenance, cleaning, organizing, and mental space. That pile of books you never read, the dozens of apps on your phone you never use, the clothes you never wear, all of them silently weigh on your mind. Minimalism asks a simple but powerful question. Do I really need this? And if not, why am I holding on to it? There's a concept psychologists call the paradox of choice. It means that the more options we have, the harder it becomes to choose, and the less satisfied we feel afterward. Think of walking into a store with 100 different kinds of cereal. Instead of feeling free, you feel overwhelmed. You start wondering if you chose the right one, and that doubt follows you home. This happens not only in stores, but in our relationships, our work, and even our goals. We live in a culture of endless options, but also endless dissatisfaction. Minimalism, on the other hand, helps us see that clarity doesn't come from having everything. It comes from knowing what's enough. The beauty of minimalism lies in its quiet rebellion. In a consumer-driven world, it dares to say, happiness isn't for sale. You don't need to buy your way to peace. You don't need to fill your space or your schedule to feel successful. A friend of mine, Anna, once worked as a fashion designer in London. Her apartment looked like something straight out of a magazine. Stylish, full of designer furniture, always perfect for Instagram. But behind the pictures, she felt trapped by her possessions and her image. One day, she came across a line that said, "The things you own end up owning you." It hit her deeply. Within months, she sold most of her belongings, downsized to a small studio, and started designing sustainable clothing. She told me, "I stopped trying to look successful and started trying to feel peaceful." That's what minimalism truly is, trading appearances for authenticity. But minimalism today isn't just about physical clutter. It's also about digital clutter, the invisible kind that steals our time and attention. How many times have you opened your phone just to check one message, and 30 minutes later, you're lost in an endless scroll of content you barely remember? The average person touches their phone over 2,000 times a day. We call it connection, but often it's just distraction. Digital minimalism means taking back control, turning off notifications, deleting unnecessary apps, unsubscribing from newsletters you never read, setting time limits for social media. It's not about rejecting technology. It's about using it consciously, so it serves you instead of enslaving you. Try spending 1 hour without your phone, just you, your thoughts, and the world around you. At first, it might feel uncomfortable, even boring. But then, you'll feel something rare in modern life: clarity. Minimalism also helps us question another modern myth, the myth of productivity. We're taught that being busy means being important, that the more we do, the more we're worth. But what if busyness is just a form of avoidance? What if doing less, but doing it with focus and intention, actually leads to a richer life? Steve Jobs once said, "Innovation is saying no to 1,000 things." The same applies to living well. Saying no to distractions, unnecessary obligations, or toxic relationships isn't selfish. It's essential. Your time is your most valuable. Currency, and minimalism teaches you to spend it wisely. Applying minimalism to daily life doesn't mean throwing everything away or living in an empty apartment. It's about intentional living. Start by decluttering your surroundings, not to achieve some aesthetic, but to create space for peace. Keep only what adds value or joy. Choose quality over quantity, a few meaningful possessions, not endless cheap ones. Simplify your schedule. Don't say yes to every invitation or opportunity. Say yes only to what aligns with your values. Before buying something new, pause and ask, "Do I really need this, or am I just chasing a feeling?" More often than not, we shop to fill emotional gaps, boredom, loneliness, stress, not actual needs. Minimalism also goes beyond the physical. It's emotional. Letting go of possessions can sometimes feel like letting go of parts of yourself. Memories, identities, expectations. That's why decluttering can be emotional. You're not just sorting through things. You're sorting through your past. But when you release what no longer serves you, you make space for who you're becoming. You realize that memories don't live in objects. They live in you. And that realization is deeply freeing. Joshua Becker, one of the key voices in the minimalist movement, once said, "The first step in crafting the life you want is to get rid of everything you don't." Minimalism isn't about emptiness. It's about creating room for meaning. When your space is calm, your mind becomes calm. When your schedule has breathing room, your thoughts begin to flow. Minimalism gives you permission to rest, to slow down, to savor. You begin to notice the small details you once overlooked. The warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of rain against the window, the simple joy of a quiet evening. These aren't grand experiences, but they're the ones that make life beautiful. The more space you create, the more present you become, and that presence is where happiness lives. At its heart, minimalism is about freedom. Freedom from comparison, from guilt, from the endless cycle of wanting more. It's about choosing being over having. When you walk into a minimalist home, it feels calm not because it's empty, but because everything in it has a purpose. There's harmony between the space and the person who lives there. You can do the same with your life. Keep what truly matters, and let go of what doesn't. It's a process of subtraction that adds peace. Minimalism isn't loud. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It's quiet but powerful, a small, steady revolution against the culture of excess. It reminds us that happiness isn't something you can accumulate. It's something you uncover when you strip away everything that distracts from it. When you stop trying to have everything, you start to see that you already have enough. And maybe that's the secret modern life has forgotten. That less can lead us back to more. So as you go through your day today, notice what's truly essential. Maybe it's the taste of your morning coffee, the sound of laughter, or the few minutes of silence before the world wakes up. You know, as I was finishing my coffee that day, staring at my empty desk, I realized something profound. Minimalism is not just about what we remove from our lives, but about what we make space for. It's not about living with nothing. It's about living with meaning. And that distinction changes everything. Once you've decluttered your home, You start to notice how minimalism slowly spills into every corner of your life. It's like a gentle wave. First, you tidy your closet, then your phone, then your calendar. And before you know it, you're decluttering your mind. You start asking deeper questions. Why am I doing this? Who am I doing it for? What truly adds value to my days? Minimalism becomes less about throwing things away and more about curating a life that feels intentional. Every yes you say becomes precious because it means saying no to 100 other things that don't align. Take work, for example. In a world that glorifies busyness, minimalism whispers the opposite. It tells you that being productive is not about filling every second, but about focusing on what actually matters. I used to believe multitasking was a badge of honor, juggling emails, meetings, and deadlines. But one day I realized I was busy, yet not effective. I was chasing speed, not direction. Now, I try to apply minimalism to my workday. I start with a single priority, not 10. I mute notifications. I work in silence. I remind myself that creativity doesn't grow in chaos but in clarity. And you know what? I get more done, and I feel lighter. That's the paradox of minimalism. The less you do, the more you achieve, because you're finally present. And presence. That's something we've lost in our hyper-connected lives. Think about it. We scroll while eating, text while walking, and even watch shows while relaxing. We consume so much noise that silence feels awkward. But minimalism reintroduces us to that forgotten feeling, the calm between the chaos. There's a quiet magic in doing one thing at a time. When you wash the dishes, you just wash the dishes. You feel the water, hear the clinking of plates, smell the soap. It sounds poetic, but that's mindfulness, and it's one of the greatest gifts minimalism gives us. The Japanese concept of ma captures this beautifully. It means the space between things, not emptiness, but potential. Ma is what allows us to breathe between the notes of a song, between words in a conversation, between moments in our day. Minimalism invites us to live in that space, to appreciate pauses, not fill them. Let's talk about digital life, the part of modern existence where clutter often hides the most. We might clean our rooms, but our phones? They're digital jungles. Hundreds of apps, thousands of photos, endless notifications. Every ping, every red dot steals a fragment of our attention. We think we're connected, but often we're just distracted. One day, I deleted half of my apps. I unsubscribed from endless newsletters. I turned off all non-essential notifications. The first few days felt strange, like I was missing something. But slowly, I noticed how quiet my mind became. I stopped reaching for my phone every few minutes. I started noticing people again. The barista's smile, the color of the sky, the rhythm of life. That's digital minimalism, not rejecting technology but using it with purpose. Instead of mindless scrolling, we choose mindful connecting. Instead of letting algorithms dictate what we see, we decide what deserves our attention. Because attention is our most precious currency, and once we give it away, it's gone forever. Minimalism also reshapes how we see success. Society tells us that success means more money, more followers, more possessions. But minimalism suggests something radical, that success might mean less stress, less noise, less chasing. Think of people who seem truly at peace. They're rarely the ones flaunting their achievements. They're often the ones with quiet confidence, who live simply but meaningfully. They don't need validation, because they've already found what matters. I once met a man in Bali who owned a tiny coffee shop by the beach. No marketing, no fancy machines, no social media buzz. Just him, his beans, and his view of the ocean. I asked him if he ever wanted to expand. He smiled and said, Why would I want more when I already have enough? That sentence stuck with me, because enough is a word we rarely use, yet it's the essence of contentment. Minimalism helps us rediscover enough. It helps us stop running. It reminds us that life's richest moments often come from simplicity. A morning walk, a conversation, a meal cooked with love. When we stop filling our days with clutter, we start seeing beauty in the ordinary. Even in relationships, minimalism brings clarity. It teaches us that connection is not measured by numbers, but by depth. Having hundreds of friends online doesn't mean we're loved. Sometimes one honest conversation means more than 100 likes. When we choose people who matter, we stop performing and start relating. In a way, minimalism is an act of rebellion against consumerism, against noise, against the idea that we must always be more. It's a declaration that we are already enough, if only we stop long enough to realize it. But minimalism is not always easy. It can feel uncomfortable. When you start letting go of things, habits, people, you face emptiness. And emptiness can feel scary. That's why so many people fill their lives with stuff to avoid the silence. Yet in that silence lies transformation. I remember the first weekend after I decluttered my apartment. No TV, no background noise, just me and the hum of the city outside. At first I felt uneasy, exposed even. But as hours passed, I began to hear thoughts I'd long ignored. I wrote, I reflected, I dreamed, and I realized minimalism doesn't take away comfort. It gives you yourself back. There's also a deeper dimension to minimalism, a moral one. When we consume less, we impact the planet less. Each object we don't buy means fewer resources extracted, less waste produced, less pollution created. In that sense, minimalism is not just personal, but ecological. It's a quiet form of activism. Think about your closet. How many clothes do we buy each year? How many end up unworn, tossed aside after one season? The fashion industry is one of the biggest polluters on Earth. So every time we choose quality over quantity, repair instead of replace, we're voting for sustainability. Minimalism is a mindset that connects self-care with planet care. And this philosophy extends beyond possessions. It's about our schedule, too. We often overcommit to projects, meetings, social obligations, until our calendars become battlefields. But minimalism asks, what if we made space for rest, for play, for doing nothing? What if unproductive time was actually the most valuable? Imagine waking up on a Sunday with no plans, just space. Space to wander, to think, to breathe. That's not laziness. That's freedom. Because busyness is not a virtue. It's often a form of escape. Minimalism brings us back to stillness, which is where clarity lives. There's a beautiful saying by Lao Tzu. To attain knowledge, add things every day. To attain wisdom, remove things every day. That, to me, is the heart of minimalism. Wisdom is subtraction. So how do we start living minimally, not just in our homes, but in our minds and hearts? Start small. Choose one area. Maybe it's your desk. Maybe it's your digital space. Maybe it's your social circle. Ask yourself, does this add value? Does it serve who I want to become? If not, let it go, gently, without guilt. Then notice what happens. The more you let go, the more light enters. The more space you make, the more clarity comes. And that's the real reward, not the aesthetic of an empty room, but the peace of an uncluttered soul. Minimalism is not a finish line. It's a practice. Some days you'll slip back into chaos, and that's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's awareness. To live consciously, to pause before saying yes, to choose depth over speed, quality over quantity, essence over excess. So maybe tonight, before you go to bed, You look around your room and ask, what in here truly makes me happy? You'll be surprised. Most of the answers aren't things. They're moments, memories, people, dreams. Minimalism doesn't demand that we own less. It invites us to be more grateful, more present, more alive. Because in the end, the richest life is not the one filled with stuff, but the one filled with purpose. And when you strip away the noise, what's left, your values, your passions, your love, that's who you truly are. So maybe tomorrow, start with one small act of letting go. Unsubscribe from one email. Clear one corner of your desk. Say no to one unnecessary meeting. And as you do, listen closely. You might hear something you haven't heard in a long time. The quiet hum of a simpler, fuller life. Minimalism, after all, isn't about less for the sake of less. It's about making room for more of what matters. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of abundance we've all been searching for. As I wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with one last thought. Minimalism is not about what you lose. It's about what you gain. You gain clarity. You gain time. You gain yourself. We live in a world that constantly tells us to want more. More success, more money, more recognition. But maybe what we truly need is less. Less noise, less pressure, less distraction. Because when we stop chasing everything, we finally start living. Minimalism isn't about perfection. It's about intention. It's about choosing with awareness, living with purpose, and loving with presence. It's about creating a life that feels spacious, peaceful, and honest. And when you get there, even just a glimpse of it, you realize that simplicity is not the absence of joy, but the path to it. So tonight, as you put your phone away, take a breath. Feel the quiet. Look around and notice the beauty that was always there, waiting beneath the clutter. Maybe that's what minimalism has been trying to teach us all along, that life doesn't get better when we add more, but when we finally have enough. You've been listening to Speak Smart IELTS, where ideas meet language and stories meet purpose. Thank you for spending your time with me today. If this episode made you pause, reflect, or breathe a little deeper, then maybe, just maybe, it's already done its job.